Well, it was the 90s, and some of the greatest, most fun vehicles were out on the road. Every major automobile manufacturer, especially in the North American marketplace, had not only one, but most of them had 3 to 5 different types of sports cars out there. Now, we've all taken a look at the rise and the fall of the sports car marketplace. And back in the 90s was its heyday. Sports cars were big, and everyone had them because everybody was getting into the automotive marketplace, and young people wanted something fun. Well, those days may be over now, or they might just be around the corner yet again. With the increase in sales in products like the BRZ GR86 and the Mazda Miata, a lot of other manufacturers are starting to take a look at bringing a little fun back to the automobile industry. And today, AutoLooks is going to take a look at the new and up-and-coming sports car race. Welcome back to the AutoLooks podcast. I'm your host, as always, the Dr. to the automotive industry, Mr. Everett J, coming to you from our main host website at AutoLooks.net. If you haven't been there, stop by, check it out, read some of the reviews, check out some of the ratings, check out the Corporate Links websites, and find more from the AutoLooks podcast, as all of our pre-existing automotive podcasts are right there on the AutoLooks.net website. The AutoLooks podcast is brought to you by Ecom Entertainment Group and distributed by Podbeam.com. If you'd like to get in touch with us, send us an email over at email@autolooks.net. So like we said in the beginning, the rise of the sports car industry yet again. Well, it's not really a rise. It's more a rejuvenation. The sports car industry was at its heyday back in the 1990s. And with the increase in safety and less desire for more people to own vehicles at a younger age, the sports car industry retracted by 2008. Today, we start to look at sports cars and think they're something of a bygone era. They're something from our past. We see a lot of them out there and we start to think, maybe when I hit middle age, I'll want to get one. Well, all those drivers in the early 2000s who didn't go out and get one are now hitting their middle age. It's similar to that of the retro craze of the early 2000s. The sports car market is becoming a booming industry. For myself, looking for a nice two-door sports car from either the 80s, the 90s, or even the early 2000s is getting more and more expensive every single year. And now with the introduction of electric and hydrogen power into the automotive marketplace, and a lost generation of people who don't even know how to drive a stick shift. The heyday of the sports car industry back in the 90s has become a big thing. Now, the retro craze has gone through, and it's actually still growing to this day, so people are going back and looking at great things from the 1980s and want to relive them. Sports cars are part of that, and the rebirth in industries and television shows like Initial D have bred new life back into those previous sports cars. When I was in college nearly 20 years ago, I was able to pick up an AE86 for $700. We're talking 2003. So 21 years ago, I saw one for sale, stick shift, notchback, for $700. And it ran. Back then, I could pick up something like a 240SX, a 300ZX for under $2,000 in running condition and not even rotten. In today's golden age, I look at that AE86 that I saw for $700 and I'm looking at more like $17,000. The average price for sports car entry these days, you're looking between $10,000 to $20,000 for entry, even into the used car market for fun 5-speed sports cars. Well, one company didn't want to let that go, and Mazda has been producing the Miata for us. We get it. The Miata is not your regular sports car, not one of those ones you really think of when you think of fun, fast sports cars. You think of 240SXs, RX-7s, Toyota Supras, and even the Celicas. You think of some of those great sports cars you can remember from back in the 90s. Everyone had them. We had the Eagle Talon and Mitsubishi Eclipse counterparts, the 3000 GT and the Dodge Stealth, the Dodge Daytonas, the Chevrolet Cobalt Z24s, the Chevrolet Berettas, the Mercury Capris, the 4-cylinder Mustangs, and the Mercury Cougars, the Ford Probe, the Nissan 240SX, 200SX, 180SX, 300ZX, 350Z. We had the Supras, the Celicas, the MR2s. Hell, we had the Toyota Paseos, the Nissan Pulsars, Mazda RX-7s, Mazda RX-3, the Mazda RX-6. There was a multitude of sports cars back in the day, and all of these sports cars came with purist transmissions. And what a purist transmission is that stick shift. In today's day and age, a stick shift is not the entry-level, cheap bottom-end vehicle that we used to have before 2020. 2020, a stick shift was your entry into the automotive world. That's what the poorest of poor bought as their entry level, and this still pre-exists in other nations around the world. But it also was a purist's performance brand. And why did we all love stick shifts in our sports cars back in the day? Why didn't we want the automatics? Hell, my dad's 1970 Mustang is an automatic. Why did we want those stick shifts? Because back in those days, if you were able to shift right, you could shift faster than an automatic could shift. Today, that's null and void. And with the advent of the electric industry without any gears whatsoever, the standard has no meaning in today. And people look at them as poor entry-level vehicles. There are very few stick shifts on the market today, with Kia being one of the only car companies out there that still provides a stick shift as their bottom-end entry level into the automotive world. Yeah, you can still get stick shift versions of the Kia Rio. Why do you think it's still one of the best-selling entry-level vehicles in the North American marketplace? One, it's cheap, and two, it can be had with a stick shift. But what does this all have to do with the sports car industry? Well, we all love those sports cars, and now a lot of us have hit middle age. So between the ages of 30 and 50, and we're starting to look back at our childhood and realize that we didn't go out and we didn't buy that first sports car. We went away to college, and then we got into buying houses and having families. We completely missed out on that fun period of our life. Everybody always blames this as a midlife crisis, but we were always told this is what we're supposed to do. Looking back at it, we start to smack ourselves in the back of the head and say, you were an idiot. You should have just gone out and done what you wanted to do because that's what your parents did, and your parents still made it. But we didn't. We didn't buy those sports cars, and because of it, we drove down the demand in the sports car marketplace. And with less and less of our friends getting into buying vehicles at a younger age, most of us were looking at buying fun four-door vehicles. Yeah, that's a term that started coming out in the 2000s. The fun four-door. Products like the Nissan Altima with its Altezza taillights gave us that cool, sporty appeal. Also, 4 doors and 4 easily accessible seats for all of our friends. And then we started getting families. We needed something safer and easier to get into, so we weren't getting into coupes by the time we got into our first vehicles. Yeah, we could squeeze our friends into the back seat of them, but getting a child seat in and out of the back seat of a coupe is a pain in the ass. So a lot of us, as you would call us, millennials, stayed away from entering the sports car marketplace. We didn't get our first vehicle when we were 18. We started getting our first vehicles when we were between the ages of 25 and 32. We waited later in life to get our first vehicles. We were done college or university by the time we bought our first vehicle, so we're thinking more about longer term. Well, now we all want to get those sports cars. And with companies like Toyota and Subaru teaming up together to build the BRZ GR86 and Mazda still having the Miata out there, by the time we hit that midlife crisis, we wanted that sports car. And with those two vehicles being the only ones still in existence, we're limited on what we can get. Entry level into the Mustang, Camaro, and even Challenger ring is still higher than getting into the BRZ GR86 Miata ring. And muscle cars are of a bygone era. They're what your parents or your grandparents drove. Sure, we still think they're cool and we still want them, but that's a muscle car. We want something fun and fast around corners. Something that's versatile. It could take us to work and take us out in the back roads. Muscle cars are designed for hands-down performance and all on a straight line, where the BRZ GR86 are designed to go back and forth to work on a daily basis, and they give us the power for that back road fun. Well, the automobile industry is starting to take notice, and with their sales starting to increase even into their second generation, and their second generation barely having an update over the previous generation, some other companies are starting to realize there's a market for entry-level sports cars again. Honda is looking at bringing back the Prelude. Now, we get it. Back in the day, Honda had the Accord and the Prelude. So they had their coupe version of the Accord sedan and their sports coupe, the Prelude. Well, Honda wants to bring back the Prelude to go up against the BRZ GR86 duo. Nissan is considering bringing back the 240SX. Sure, they have Godzilla, but Nissan's one of the only ones in the North American marketplace that actually has more than one sports car in their stable. They have both the GTR and the 370, but they want something for entry level, something for someone like myself who doesn't want to put down a ton of money but still wants a nice, reliable, fast car. And then they also want to put it down for the new age generation. Those kids that see that the electric age is upon us, and that fun world that our parents grew up in with stick shifts and two-door sports cars is going to disappear. With direct power, there's no need for a stick shift whatsoever. Even though Toyota is considering bringing one out, there's no need for two-door vehicles. With less of us living in suburban areas and more of us living in urban areas, we don't need those vehicles. But they're looking at it as they're standing at the edge of a cliff. The cliff is the electric age and the lack of the fun that they see in the future. And those cars that we bypassed back in the day as being the only remaining remnants of that fun period. The Fast and the Furious really brought upon a major standpoint for the import tuner scene in the aftermarket industry. But as it grew, so did police presence at events. And within 10 years, by the time the third movie came out, people were getting away from these fun aftermarket tuner cars because they were being singled out by the police. And with less people entering the marketplace, these two-door fun fast vehicles were disappearing at an alarming rate. By 2012, nearly every major two-door sports car or coupe had all but vanished from global markets. Today we're starting to see some new coupe and some new sports cars come out. The Hyundai Veloster was one of those kind of freakishly odd ones to come out at a time period where people were getting out of sports cars. Now the Veloster is all but gone now, but it's something where Hyundai showed us that they had fun vehicles. Gotta remember, Hyundai had the S-Coupe. Then they had the Tucson. Then they had the Veloster. They kept these fun sports cars just hanging out with us for such a while. Honda brought back the CRX as the CRZ. Scion used to have the TC. So these sports cars were still existing, even into more modern times. But with less and less of them being around and less of us looking to buy them, the market had shrunk to a point where it wasn't even viable to build these vehicles anymore. Today we're now looking at a new rebirth. Alpine helped bring it out in Europe with the A110, showcasing to us that people still want those nice purist sports cars. Porsche is yet again saying the 718 Cayman and Boxsters can make it into the electric age. Toyota has brought back the Supra. SSC has brought a new car for the Chinese marketplace. We're starting to see more interest into this market. But why? Why would a company like MG look at building something like the Cypster? It's a two-door roadster. Well, MG was famous for roadsters back in the day. But why are they looking at this? This market barely exists in this market today. Why would they even consider bringing this vehicle out? Well, with China relaxing its rules on vehicle ownership, and with MG looking at a bigger European presence, they want to bring back their previous image. They want to bring back the original MG. And even though they're not going to bring back their original convertibles and roadsters, they're going to try and bring them back in a way that the world can accept them today. These sports cars may not be dead, and companies like Hosan Auto are showcasing to us that they may be alive. Hell, even Alpha Motors in the States are showcasing to us that two-door coupes and even miniature sports coupes can still stick around. Honda has held on to the Civic Coupe for as long as they possibly could. Hell, Kia gave us the Forte back in the day and the Pro C GT. Sports cars and sports coupes can make their presence. And with Volkswagen considering bringing back the Beetle for a new electric generation, rebirth into the sports car industry could be happening for us. But why? Why is it happening? Why are people considering bringing sports cars back from the dead into a market that doesn't want them? Well, that's the funny thing. Automobile companies take a look at the resale marketplace as well, and they pay attention to auction houses as well. Auction houses today are managing to move these sports cars at a higher rate. Their value is increasing every single year because as there's less and less of them out there, more and more people want them. Considering the fact that the Borrego that's sitting in my driveway is one of less than 1,600 ever sold in Canada, and less of them are pre-existing in this market, if Kia ever brought back a body-on-frame SUV, the resale value of my vehicle would skyrocket because there's such a limited amount of them and they are the original occurrence of them. People will want to get their hands on them. And with a generation of collectors before us, and if you really want to see this generation and collecting things and driving up the rates, take a look at the video game industry and how much video games have gone up in price just in the past 5 years. Like my Zelda Ocarina of Time game, the original gold edition in the gold box with the original golden ticket, because I was one of the first 1,200 people in the country of Canada to get it, is worth nearly $500 now. 10 years ago, about $150. Because there's such a limited amount of them, and an entire generation completely just threw these things moves away. Now, with the craze over retro in the past coming upon us, a rebirth is happening. The sports car industry may never return to where it once was in the 1990s, but it will grow in the next decade. And it will grow in 3 ways. 1, you'll start to see more electric coupes out there, because as electric cars become even cheaper to manufacture and cheaper to buy than their ICE counterparts, there's more of an ability for entry-level ownership. And as we've seen, as prices come down, entry-level ownership goes up. And in the past decade, ownership of vehicles and the cost to get in has substantially increased, especially between 2019 and 2023, where even used car sales pricing went up to a point where it was almost better to buy brand new. So with electric sports coupes, and sports cars coming out, this could help drive up the market share and drive up sales within this industry. Number 2, the internal combustion engine has been now given a new lease on life. With the reduction in sales in the electric vehicle industry, people are now moving back to both hybrid and internal combustion engine vehicles for the meantime, until the electric industry and its infrastructure can be sorted out. So a new rebirth into the ICE vehicles. Now, the new Prelude is going to be looking at building a hybrid sports coupe. Not the hybrid like the CRZ, but similar to it, and it's similar in context to what they want to do with the Acura NSX. Our third one that we've noticed is hybrid vehicles. Yes, in the past couple years, we've noticed that there's been a few new hybrid sports cars coming out into the marketplace. Not all of them have found great success, but with Toyota looking at all avenues for new products, the niche of adding in a Prius sports car might be something that they might want to take a look at in the future. We get it, a hybrid can never be as fast as an internal combustion engine or even electric counterpart. We all learned that when it came to the CRZ, but when you make it look amazing, and you sell it on the fact that you'll save gas and look good doing it, with the resurgence in sales for the automobile industry, people in even intercity climates might be more inclined to buy a hybrid sports car to go back and forth to work in. Take a look at this hypercar industry, the Scion and SF8 hybrid supercars. They can run on total electricity for a short amount of time. Do that for a sports car and you can cruise out of the driveway as quiet as possible, and then nail the gas and open up all 6 cylinders underneath the hood. Similar to that of how the Dodge Durango drives through town on 6 cylinders. But when you nail the gas, that Borla exhaust opens up to let all 8 cylinders breathe properly. Yes, the sports car industry is starting to grow. And it's a good thing, because we were getting to the point where we were going to have to drop down $20,000 on a 25 to 30-year-old sports car just to get something fun and fast for our own garage. Why do you think I kept my little stick shift Rio? It's a cheap, crappy economy car, but trying to find a stick shift in this marketplace is really hard. The fun, fast environment that once pre-existed in the 1990s may never come back to its main point, but the market today may see something similar to it. Sports cars are on their way up, and the industry is about to have a rebirth, with companies like Mazda, Nissan, Honda, Toyota, and even Dodge considering getting back into the entry-level sports car industry to give light to a new generation of sports car fans. Yes, those fun, fast little cars may just be sitting in your driveway real soon. And as we talked about earlier this year, the rise of the new 3-car driveway, this new rise may be giving rise to more 2-door products. And for us, that's something we look forward to in the future. So if you like this podcast, please like, share, or comment about it on any major social feeds that you found us on, or any major podcast sites that you have found the AutoLooks podcast on, from iTunes to Spotify to Podbeam and even iHeartRadio. You can find the AutoLooks podcast on every major podcast streaming site around the globe, big or small. We're on them all from the AutoLooks podcast. And after you like that, stop by the website, read some of the reviews, check out some of the ratings, go to the Corporate Links website, and write us a comment. Tell us what you think about the AutoLooks.net website and the AutoLooks podcast. Oh, from Ecom Entertainment Group and distributed by Podbeam.com. If you'd like to get in touch with either Everett J., the host of the AutoLooks podcast, or the AutoLooks podcast themselves, send us an email over at email@autolooks.net. So for myself, Everett J., the AutoLooks podcast, and Ecom Entertainment Group, strap yourself in for this one fun, wild ride that the new sports cars are going to take us on.